Now, scenarios. So I wanted to bring you in to show you this part. All right. We throw around these ideas all the time, but I want to make sure that we're completely clear on this. An LKP versus an area. An LKP will have a hotspot, a corresponding hotspot. If you believe for any reason that you have a more probable position one way or the other, that's more of an LKP, not an area. If you think that, hey, they're in this fishing area, but there's a chance that they're most likely over here, well, then that should maybe be looked at as an LKP with some air to encompass the entire fishing area, but the center point is most likely where they are. That type of thing. So you should be thinking about it more, not necessarily this whole idea of, well, they're somewhere here, so I'll just pick area. If you think that something's more probable, you might want to build that in. The other thing I'll show you is that you can use something like an ellipse. A lot of people don't do that, but you can. LOB, there is a misunderstanding that an LOB, that the addendum says plus or minus 2, but you look into SAROPS, it says plus or minus 4, or is it the other way around? But the way it's working in SAROPS is it actually is accounting for both, because you're going to see that it's got this 2 and then it's got a 4 beyond that. So don't think that it's missing that. So again, there's an ALCOS that's saying, hey, we've changed some of the ways that the system's being used, and they might show that they directly violate policy. In those instances, SAROPS is policy, not policy. And that ALCOS is going to be doing that because we kept having trouble. As I started teaching advanced concepts in MSP2, everybody was like saying, yeah, but Chief, what's the policy on that? I go, well, there's no policy on that, and SAROPS has changed since then. That policy was written way before SAROPS had the ability to even create this. For instance, you all probably have a policy, a local policy on reverse drift. And I always get people who ask me, well, Chief, what's the policy on reverse drift? So according to policy, it doesn't exist. Because reverse drift came out after the policy was written. So keep that in mind, because I'm going to talk more about the fact that the ALCOS will try to alleviate that, saying, hey, in times in which we violate or change according to the policy, you need to be following what we're saying here. And I'll talk more about reverse, but that's the most misunderstood one, because it is not employed by field as designed. I'll let you chew on that, because one of the things that I have to explain to people is that if you find a swamped boat and you say, well, I think there's a chance a person came off of it, I go, great, when? Well, within the last 12 hours. Okay, so if you take it back 12 hours and forward 12 hours, is that the same as back 6 hours and forward 6 hours? No. Is going back 4 hours and forward 4 hours the same as going back 12 and forward 12? No. Because as weather is dynamic and changing, so you just picked an arbitrary time to go forward with, cool, but that's not the same thing. Believe it or not, if you really want to know how you're supposed to do that, you won't like the answer. It's voyage again. I hate this, and I don't want anyone, I'm not trying to show you in order to get you to do it this way. Is that clear? Does that make sense to everybody? I'm not telling you to do it this way as much as I'm trying to show you what happens. You find something, you drift it backwards. When you drift it backwards, let's say 12 hours, it ends up being this huge thing. And you go, okay, well, I'll go forward 12 hours. Well, it's going to double in size again, and it might end up being up here. Right? It ends up being this huge area way up here. But if you'd gone back forward and gone back 4, and forward 4, it ended up being here instead. See what I'm saying? So by picking arbitrary times, it doesn't really help you. But if you really want to know how you're supposed to do this, is that you would drift this all the way back to figure out the most likely position, like an LKP or an ellipse like this, and then voyage back to here. Because you know where it came from 12 hours ago and where it ends up 12 hours from now, if you're making the assumption that someone came off of it. That's a man overboard. Person known to be here fell off somewhere between there. That's a man overboard. That's a voyage. Does that mean I want you to do that on every single reverse drift? No, not at all. Not even a little bit. I'm just trying to show you that the way that it's being employed isn't actually the way it would be used. So, when people ask me these questions, I say, well, the other thing you're making the assumption on is that the drifted object stayed in that state the whole time. If you drifted something back that was swamped, and you drifted back 12 hours, that means it maintained a swamped state for 12 hours. If you think it's been upright for any point in time, that's a different drift. So utilizing the reverse drift, we have to be clear on that. Is that you're saying that it's maintained this state, you're saying that you know for a fact that the stress took place at a certain specific time, and you're saying we need to take that specific time going forward to this time, and then use all of that specific information just so we can feel better about where to put an asset.
Well, sometimes they look for breakpoints like sunrise, sunset.
Yeah, but again, now we're making the assumption that the
Right.
stress took place at the break point.
Right. And is that reasonable?
Right. And so utilize all that information to try to figure out if it is reasonable or if it's not reasonable, because even then, luckily for you all, with cold water, you might say, I don't want to go back maybe even for just a couple hours, because past that, they're dead anyway. It's terrible, but it's true. Down in Florida, they go, let's just go back to 12 hours and go forward 12 hours and see where we end up. I'm like, you're going to end up with a gigantic position. It's not the same position as if they fell in the water 4 hours ago.
So what do they do in that Jupiter search? Do they use Voyage?
No, everybody's been using pretty much the reverse drift and then going forward with an area, which is what they were originally showing in MSP, and it's actually not the way you
That
should
must
be
have
using
been
it.
huge.
Yeah. And it's not the way you do it.
So you would go back to an area, you would create an area based on the reverse drift, and then you would drift an area to the point that you found it.
I wouldn't create an area, I would create an ellipse. And I would do a voyage.
Yeah, I said that. I said voyage. So
Yeah, but I would create an ellipse. I'm going to show you that in reverse drifts, you shouldn't use the area all the time. If there's a hot spot,
Yeah.
if there's a higher probability, you should keep the higher probability.
So you do your reverse drift, you get your area, and you can create an ellipse instead of an area, and then you drift it to the point where you found it, because obviously that's the point that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then you would do it as
So what are people
PIW.
doing? They're just drifting an area?
So they just go back here, and then they go PIW, and they drift it, and then it ends up here. But that's making the assumption then that the PIW was created 12 hours ago and has been drifting for 12 hours. That's not the same thing as the PIW was on the swamp boat for 12 hours and fell off an hour ago. It'll be back here.
Right. Do you know where the kayak or whatever ended up?
But if we do this on every single case, this will be,
It takes time.
yeah, and it's honestly, it's almost asinine at that point, because why 12 hours? Why not 4? Why not 6? Why not, you know what I mean?
Without a reasonable assumption about the time of or the time that distress occurred, there's really no point in doing reverse. It's completely arbitrary.
Right, we're just trying to figure out, like, what are some possibilities, because I want to put an SRU up. When the truth of it is that really the SRU, if it's employed on a 1.5 nautical mile Victor Sierra like we normally do, that would account for anything that's been within the last 2 hours, because if everybody's moving at approximately a knot, it's gonna be close to that. So really what we've been doing and employing is correct, but somebody wants a metric to help them tell them that they did the right thing. Understand, I'm just trying to tell you that as I try to explain this to people, we're making a lot of assumptions in order to just go forward with something, and what you're gonna end up with is just something that goes, okay, if they fell off this thing 12 hours ago, and the boat's been swamped for 12 hours, and they've been drifting for 12 hours, this would be their position. Okay. So that's what I mean by backwards 10 and forwards 10 is not the same as backwards 4 and forwards 4. Drift position is going to change.